Hi, boys and girls. Welcome back to Lesson 7, The Wind in the Willows. This is the Dulce Domum Part 2. Let's review what we've been talking a lot about in The Wind in the Willows. We've been talking a lot about theme. Everybody say theme. And the themes that we've been talking about are friendship and loyalty, responsibility, irresponsibility, and most recently, we talked about hospitality, making your guests and your friends feel welcome and taken care of. There were some other literary tools or elements that we've talked about so far. We've mentioned them a few times. The first one is perspective. Whose perspective are we hearing the story from? Who's telling us the story? Another one is dialogue. We use quotation marks in our writing to show dialogue. Dialogue, remember, is when the characters are talking to one another. And then we have narration. That's when the author is telling the story. Today's chapter is the second part of Dulce Domum. There you go, Dulce Domum. Does anyone remember what that means? It means home sweet home in Latin, an old language that not many people speak anymore. At the end of our read aloud last time, Mole is following his unerring nose, his unmistakably nose down a tunnel. Remember, Rat did not want to stop for Mole to go to his old house, but then he did. He turned around and they were looking for it. So let's try to make a prediction. What do you think will happen in today's read aloud? And how do you think some of our themes of friendship and loyalty, hospitality, responsibility, or irresponsibility might play a role in the second half of our chapter? Let's listen to find out, boys and girls. It was close and airless, and the earthy smell was strong. The mole struck a match, and by its light the rat saw that they were standing in an open space. The space was neatly swept and sanded underfoot. Directly facing them was Mole's little front door with Mole End painted in Gothic lettering over the bell pull at the side. Gothic lettering is a fancy writing style or type of font. You can see it's not regular handwriting there. Mole took down a lantern from a nail on the wall and lit it, and Rat, looking around him, saw that they were in a sort of a forecourt. A garden seat stood on one side of the door and on the other a roller. The mole was a tidy animal and could not stand having his ground kicked up by other animals into little heaps of earth. Down on one side of the forecourt ran a skittle alley with benches along it and little wooden tables. In the middle was a small, round pond. Skittles is a lawn game similar to bowling, and the Skittle Alley is like a bowling alley except outside on a lawn. I wonder if you could build your own Skittle game in your backyard. Mole's face beamed at the sight of all these objects. He hurried Rat through the door, lit a lamp in the hall, and took one glance around his old home. Immediately, he saw the dust lying thick on everything, saw the cheerless, deserted look of the long-neglected house, and collapsed again on a hall chair. "Oh, Ratty!" he cried dismally. "Why ever did I do it? Why did I bring you to this poor, cold little place on a night like this?" The rat paid no heed to him. He was running here and there, opening doors, inspecting rooms and cupboards, and lighting lamps and candles. "What a capital little house this is," he called out cheerily. "Everything here and everything in its place. The first thing we want is a good fire. I'll fetch the wood and the coals, and you get a duster." Encouraged by his companion, if you see on the last page, there was the roller leaning back against the wall. This is a lawn roller, and it's a heavy metal or stone cylinder used to flatten and level the ground. So that's what Mole used so that the earth didn't get kicked up by other animals. Encouraged by his companion, the mole dusted and polished with energy, while Rat soon had a cheerful blaze roaring up in the chimney. He hailed the mole to come and warm himself, but Mole promptly had another fit of the blues. Rat, he moaned. How about your supper, you poor, cold, hungry, weary animal? I've nothing to give you. What a fellow you are for giving in, said the rat calmly. Why, only just now I saw a sardine opener on the kitchen dresser, and everybody knows that means there are sardines about somewhere. Pull yourself together and come with me and forage. They went and foraged accordingly, hunting through every cupboard and turning out every drawer. The result was not so very depressing after all. A tin of sardines, a box of Captain's biscuits nearly full, and a German sausage encased in silver paper. There's a banquet for you, observed the rat as he arranged the table. No bread, groaned the mole. No butter, no caviar, no champagne, continued the rat, grinning. And that reminds me, what's that little door at the end of the passage? Your cellar, of course. If you don't know, caviar is an expensive delicacy of special salty fish eggs. So do you think, is Rat serious or joking when he says there's no caviar or champagne? I think he's joking. Rat made the cellar door and presently reappeared with a bottle in each paw and another under each arm. Now, wherever did you pick up those prints? Make the place look so homelike, they do. No wonder you're so fond of it, Mole. Tell us all about it and how you came to make it what it is. The mole, much cheered by the rat's fine compliments, took time to show off his splendid abode. The rat, though desperately hungry, allowed the mole to hold court. At last the rat succeeded in decoying him to the table and had just got seriously to work with the sardine opener when sounds were heard from the forecourt without. Sounds like the scuffling of small feet and a confused murmur of tiny voices. Now all in a line. Hold the lantern up a bit, Tommy. Clear your throats first. Where's young Bill? What's up? Inquired the rat. I think it must be the field mice, replied the mole. They go round carol singing regularly at this time of year. I used to give them hot drinks and supper, too, sometimes. Let's have a look at them, cried the rat, jumping up and running to the door. It was a pretty sight that met their eyes. In the forecourt, lit by the dim rays of a lantern, some 8 or 10 little field mice stood in a semicircle. They had red scarves around their necks, and their forepaws were thrust deep into their pockets. With bright, beady eyes, they glanced shyly at each other. As the door opened, one of the elder ones that carried the lantern proclaimed, Now then, 1, 2, 3, and forthwith their shrill little voices rose up into the chill night air. Villagers all, this frosty tide, let your doors swing open wide. Though wind may follow and snow beside, yet draw us in by your fire to bide. Joy shall be yours in the morning. Here we stand in the cold and the sleet, blowing fingers and stamping feet. Come from far away you to greet, you by the fire and we in the street, bidding you joy in the morning. For ere one half of the night was gone, sudden a star has led us on. Raining bliss and benison, bliss tomorrow and more anon, joy for every morning. The voices ceased, the singers exchanged sidelong glances, but for a moment only. Then from up above and far away down the tunnel they had so lately traveled came the sound of distant bells ringing, joyful and clangorous peal. A clangorous peal is the loud clanging or ringing of bells. Very well sung, boys, cried the rat heartily, and now come along in and warm yourselves. Yes, come along, field mice, cried the mole eagerly. This is quite like old times. Shut the door after you. Pull up that settle to the fire. Now, you just wait a minute while we... Oh, Ratty, he cried in despair, we've nothing to give them. You leave all that to me, said the masterful rat. Here, you with the lantern, I want to talk to you. Now tell me, are there any shops open at this hour of night? Why, certainly, sir, replied the field mouse respectfully. At this time of the year, our shops keep open to all sorts of hours. Then look here, said the rat. You go off at once, you and your lantern, and you get me... Here much muttered conversation ensued, such as, fresh, mind, no, a pound of that will do. If you can't get it there, try somewhere else. Yes, of course, homemade. Finally, there was a chink of coin passing from paw to paw. The field mouse was provided with a basket for his purchases, and off he hurried. The rest of the field mice, perched in a row on the settle, their small legs swinging, gave themselves up to the enjoyment of the fire. The rat, meanwhile, was busy examining the label on one of the bottles. "I perceive this to be ginger beer," he remarked approvingly. "The very thing. Now we shall be able to mull some ginger beer. Get the things ready, Mole, while I draw the corks." Ginger beer is like a root beer. It did not take long to prepare the brew, and soon every field mouse was sipping and coughing and choking, for a little mulled ginger beer goes a long way, and wiping his eyes and laughing. "They act plays, too, these fellows," the mole explained to the rat. "Make them up all by themselves, and very well they do it, too. They gave us a capital one last year about a field mouse who was captured at sea by pirates. Here, you were in it. Get up and recite a bit." The field mouse addressed got up on his legs, giggled shyly, looked round the room, and remained absolutely tongue-tied. His comrades cheered him on, Mole coaxed and encouraged him, and the rat went so far as to shake him, but nothing could overcome his stage fright. The now mute field mouse was saved from further encouragement by the sound of the door opening. The field mouse with the lantern had reappeared with a heavy basket. There was no more talk of play acting once the contents of the basket had been tumbled out onto the table. Under the generalship of Rat, everybody was set to do something. In a very few minutes, supper was ready. As they ate, they talked of old times. They clattered off at last, very grateful indeed. When the door had closed on the last of them, Mole and Rat kicked the fire up, drew their chairs in, and discussed the events of the day. At last the rat, with a tremendous yawn, said, "Mole, I'm ready to drop. That your own bunk over on that side? Very well then, I'll take this." Rat clambered into his bunk and rolled himself up in the blankets as slumber gathered him in. Thank you for listening, boys and girls.